Today on Rebel Then King, I am continuing to talk about the new Battlecry playbook, and we have two new item types, not new items, new types of items to talk about. Welcome, adventurers. That's right, we have two new types of items available to all players as part of this rulebook. Thank you again to Paizo for giving me an advanced copy so that I can review it for you. All of the opinions in this are my own. This is not sponsored content in any way. Anyway, we have two new types of items to look at. We have Whetstones and Banners. Let's take a look at Whetstones first. So Whetstones are a new type of item that can be used to modify, improve your weapons. The rules on it say they're similar to talismans, though unlike talismans, they don't need to be affixed ahead of time. While you need only one hand to hold a whetstone, you must be holding the weapon to which you're applying the whetstone in another hand. Applying a whetstone to that weapon takes a single action, typically involving dragging or rubbing the whetstone across the weapon's edge or striking surface, after which the whetstone crumbles to dust as its magic is expended. And then there's some more rules about, two-handed weapons needing to drop a hand and, all that kind of stuff. So it's similar to a talisman, except you kind of decide when you want to use it rather than having it affixed to your weapon ahead of time. You're going to need it in one hand and then you draw your weapon across it. There are a few dozen or so, but I want to just take a look at a few to give you an idea of how they work. Starting with the Chroma Kaleidoscope. A Chroma Kaleidoscope's effects last for 1 hour. When you critically strike a creature with a weapon under the effects of a Chroma Kaleidoscope, a blast of color from the weapon forces them to attempt a will saving throw against your class DC or spell DC, whichever is higher. And this can leave creatures dazzled. So it is a cool way to put on extra effects when you crit with a Whetstone. The next I want to talk about is Dimensional Cleavestone, because this is cool. Now, some of the Whetstones are very talisman-like in the sense that they're passive. The last one we saw, this is something that comes into play when you land a crit, but some have an action, as is the case with the Dimensional Cleavestone, Tear Rift. You carve a rent in space in an adjacent square, choosing another square within 30 feet to connect with your rift. A visible slash appears in both locations, displaying the view from the other side. Until the end of your next turn, these two squares are treated as adjacent to each other. For example, so you get to make a hole in the space-time continuum, I guess not time, the space continuum, and make two squares adjacent to each other with this Whetstone. That is pretty sweet. Some of them do things like affect you, the user of the Whetstone or of the weapon, such as Frenzied Quintessence. Contained within the small iron-bound glass sphere is a raging whirlwind of colors, each fighting for prominence. After a successful strike with a weapon enhanced with Frenzied Quintessence, you are quickened for 1 round. You can use the additional action only to stride toward a foe or strike. Pretty cool. And some of the Whetstones are, they're used on a weapon, so they're very weapon-like. The Mighty Counterweight, for example, this thick lead disc is etched with geometric patterns, and a weapon it's applied to grows unusually heavy. When you attack with a weapon under the effects of a Mighty Counterweight, you deal an amount of additional bludgeoning damage equal to the number of weapon damage dice. Just a cool way to add more damage in an encounter. One other quick thing about Whetstones, in case I forgot to mention, once applied, a Whetstone's effect lasts for 1 minute unless otherwise noted. So this isn't a permanent bonus to those weapons. It's just a duration of one encounter for the most part. The next new item to talk about is banners, like the Commander's Banner. They are pretty similar, and they're actually available to all characters, not just the commander, and they have a 30-foot aura. They can be affixed to a shield or a weapon, or they can be held or attached to a pole or anything like that. So it's kind of designed to be pretty flexible in its use. And yes, a commander who has a banner can actually use one of these specific banners as their banner. So you can be a commander who gets all of the commander abilities in addition to the abilities of one of these banners. Let's take a look at a few of them to get an idea about how they work. We'll start with the Arcane Standard. Now, a fair amount of these banners don't have a passive effect, but they give you a new action that you can take when you activate it. In this case, it is Magical Weakness. Once per turn, the magic of the banner causes energy to linger, tearing away at its target, leaving them vulnerable to more. One creature within the banner's aura that has taken acid, cold, electricity, fire, or sonic damage this turn gains weakness 5 to that damage type for 1 round. Another banner with an action and activity associated with it is the Banner of Piercing Shards. Shards of sharpened glass violently shoot out from the magical banner into the newly opened wounds of a nearby enemy. The magical banner deals 1d4 persistent bleed damage to any enemy within the banner's aura. That could be a lot that has been dealt damage since the end of your last turn. That's pretty sweet. And there are some banners with passive abilities like Banner of the Restful. You see there's not an action associated with this. You and allies within the banner's aura gain a +1 item bonus to perception DCs and protection from severe cold and heat. Pretty cool. Another very fun one that is also passive and is also kind of specific to this book, the magical banner, the Flag of the Stronghold. Those who stand under the banner are prepared to face the weapons of war and defend their keep until the end. You and allies within the banner's aura gain resistance 5 to damage from siege weapons. In addition to these brand new item types, I'm wondering what you all are excited about in this book. We've already looked at some of the new archetypes, the new implement for the Thaumaturge, but there's also a bunch of new items. There are new spells, there's a new ancestry, there are new backgrounds. There is a lot going on, in addition to, of course, the new classes and the new class archetypes for the Guardian and the Commander. Let me know in the comments. I might be able to do another video yet today about this, but I also have to finish packing to go on a long work trip, and I had to spend a few hours taking a poor old cat to the emergency vet this morning, so that has kind of thrown my day into a little bit of disarray.